There. All right. We're all set up and ready to get this going. Are you ready?
You betcha.
How about you, Poop Shoot? Well, hot damn. Welcome to the 5th season of B-Movie Enema, the series. I'm your friendly neighborhood enema man, Jeff Arbuckle. As always, I'm joined by my faithful partner in crime, Nurse Disembody.
Hello, everyone out there in TV land.
Now, down here, it's the great B-Movie Poop Shoot. And if you're new around here, and let's face it, I bet most of you, or at least a good number of you are, I sit at the end of that said Poop Shoot, and it feeds us movies to watch with each episode. At times, it's sent us some pretty good ones. Sometimes it's been kind of under the weather and just kind of diarrheas out some really strange ones, but what you gonna do? I mean, after all, it's an interdimensional sphincter that seemingly just exists to crap out movies and talk through the same fart noises every time. You can say that again, buddy.
Has Poop Shoot sent this week's movie?
Great question. I suppose I should take a look, huh?
Yeah, I suppose you should.
Alright. What do we have here? Oh, well, I think this one is going to be kind of interesting. This week we've got Hannah, Queen of the Vampires.
Ooh, I like vampire movies.
You know, I know you do, and I don't think you're going to be too disappointed by this one. Now, released in 1973, Hannah, Queen of the Vampires is one of those movies that has a few different titles. The most common titles are Crypt of the Living Dead, or what we have here with Hannah, or Young Hannah, Queen of the Vampires. However, it also has been released with the name Vampire Woman.
What gives? Why so many different titles?
It's kind of hard to say. I know that it did have an original title. In Spanish, it was La Tumba de la Isla Maldita, which is translated to The Tomb of the Cursed Island, which, well, you know, that would be a pretty good title for this movie, too. Maybe, as we'll see later, a better title than one that has the character of Hannah mentioned, and definitely more accurate than the one with Living Dead in the title, and it's far more interesting than the one that just says Vampire Woman. The original director on this film was Julio Salvador, and he is also credited for the screenplay for this movie, or at least a version of this movie. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. But Salvador was born in Barcelona in the 1900s. He began writing and directing films in the 40s, right around the end of the Second World War. His older brother Jaime was also born in Barcelona, but is also often listed as a Mexican filmmaker. And that makes me wonder if the siblings maybe moved to Mexico during the rough time Spain would go through with their civil war. I'm not too sure, but most of the information I have notes that the Salvador brothers were born in Spain and that Jaime became part of what was called the Mexican Golden Era of cinema. And I'm sure if anyone knows more than I on this, they can let me know wherever they found this episode and where it was linked to. But this was the final film that Julio Salvador directed. He is credited for one more screenplay, the amazingly titled Love Brides of the Blood Mummy from 1974. But 1974 would also be when Salvador died. He passed away in Barcelona. His brother Jaime would pass away in Mexico just a couple of years later. Now, what's curious is the crediting of several of the crew on this movie. I guess we should go ahead and talk about this before the movie actually begins. Interestingly, you will only see the production company's credit, the primary cast, and then the title before the movie starts in earnest. Now, we don't actually see the rest of the typical credits until the very end of the movie. The director who will be shown on screen at the end of the movie is the character actor Ray Danton. Now, Danton is listed on Wikipedia as providing new footage to the movie. And I'm not sure if that was to maybe make it more of a suitable American film or if it was to replace an ailing Salvador or what. What probably helps resolve this is the only person credited for writing in the version that we're about to watch being Lou Shaw. Now, Wikipedia shows Shaw as the writer of the US version, while Salvador is also listed, and I assume that's the original Spanish version. Now, that would indicate to me that this might have followed possibly an older style of making bilingual films by having multiple crews work on the same movie with only minor changes here or there. It could also just be the typical Italian way of doing things where they had a multinational cast and they just kind of worked it out in editing and overdubbing later. But if it was the older style of making bilingual films and having multiple crews work on the same movie, a popular example of this is 31's Dracula, which was shot during the day with the American crew, and at night a Mexican crew came in and shot the same movie on the same sets, but with their own actors to release a Spanish language version. That could be the situation here. Certainly there are a lot of American and English speaking actors and main characters in this movie, but IMDb also shows that Ricardo Ferrer and Lois Gibson as writers, but Wikipedia states that they were story by credits. If I had to guess again, Ferrer was likely the working with Salvador and Gibson with Shaw.
Are we lost in a tangent, Jeff?
Possibly.
Oh no.
No, it's fine. I just want to follow that thread about Ray Danton.
Okay, but hurry it up, will ya? I want to get to the vampires and the queen of said vampires.
Okay. Hold your horses there, nurse. Ray Danton's career started as a child actor on radio programs in the early to mid-40s. In the 50s, he put things on hold to serve in the Korean War for a few years, but upon his return, he began appearing in Universal Pictures films. This could be where he met his wife of over 25 years, Julie Adams. Now, Adams is forever known as the bathing beauty who was the object of the Gill man's affections in The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Danton showed a great deal of talent and was nominated for the Golden Globe for Best New Male Star of the Year in 1956. He was rather busy in film and on television. He racked up over 100 credits. He had quite a few guest starring roles on popular TV series, and in 1976, a few years after this movie, and among his final acting jobs, he played the lead character in a TV movie version of Our Man Flint called Dead on Target. Now, you see, nurse, Our Man Flint was, basically an American James Bond.
Yeah, make with the vampires.
One moment, por favor.
Everybody here is losing patience.
Oh, surely not everyone.
Ha, see?
Et tu, Brutus. Anyway, Danton also had 24 credits as a director, but mostly on TV. If he did movies, they were often TV movies. But this was one of the theatrical films he was listed as directing. The year after this movie's release, he did appear in a movie with the star of this film, that we'll talk about a little bit later, and who also happened to be the star of season number 2's premiere film, The Calendar Girls. He appeared in the second segment of that film. Okay.
You're done?
I'm done.
Yippee! Vampire time, baby!
Alrighty. Well, with that, let's get into the first act of Hannah, Queen of the Vampires, and we'll catch back up with you after that.
What a way to start a movie.
Decapitating an old man and dancing around with his head?
Yeah, exactly that.
I like that Peter's goon is something like part hippie, part caveman.
I mean, what other type of person are you going to have around when you try and run a vampire cult?
Well, you got a point there. What?
I'm just thinking.
Thinking what?
If I start my own vampire cult, will you be my hippie caveman goon?
I don't know.
What don't you know? How can I sell you on being my hippie caveman goon?
Well, will I get an eye patch?
Most definitely.
Okay, well, that's obviously a plus. Fuzzy vest?
Is there any other kind of fashionable vest?
Oh, obviously not, but the big question.
Dancing with a decapitated head?
Yeah, can I do that?
I want to be the one dancing around with the heads.
That might be a deal breaker.
That's a shame.
Well, let me talk about the movie and we'll come back around to our negotiations. So the movie begins with Professor Bolton getting into a cavernous catacomb where he discovers the tomb of a king's lover named Hannah. In the course of his study of this tomb, he's strangled by the hippie caveman who is just listed in the credits, the same as I am in the streets, the wild man. But he's then put under the tomb that has to weigh, what, at least a ton? And that's how they decapitate the good professor.
The prize for finding Hannah's tomb? Death.
That's right. This brings the professor's son, Chris, to the island. Now, the name of this island?
Vampire Island. Man, this place is all about the awesome vampire vibe. You have tombs and underground catacombs, and this place is literally called Vampire Island.
Yeah, for sure. The story goes that Hannah was the wife of Louis VII, and he brought her with him on the way to fight in the Crusades. And she landed on Vampire Island after being shipwrecked. By the time Louis VII came there to rescue her and the men that were with her, they were all vampires. Unable to kill his beloved Hannah, he built the tomb on the island and put her inside, still alive. Unalived? Undead? You get it. But he left the inscription, Hannah, 1269, for the sake of the dead and the welfare of the living, that this tomb remain untouched and its occupant undisturbed until the coming of Christ. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, by order of His Majesty Louis VII. You know, I love a good warning inscription on a tomb.
I kind of have one small, teeny, tiny issue with this movie.
Uh-oh, let's have it.
Hannah? In the 13th century? For real? That's like a super common modern name. They're going to tell me that some lady in 1269 was named Hannah?
Now, I heard you grumbling about that in the first section, so I did look it up.
Nobody likes a pedant, Jeff.
I know, but you do have a point.
I do? I thought for sure you were going to tell me that it was actually some sort of common name for a long time.
Yeah, from what I saw, there is the biblical Hannah, sure. However, the popularity of the name wasn't until the Puritans started using it heavily in the 1600s. So yeah, I'm not sure it would have been, very much expected that a French king would have had a lover named Hannah in the 13th century.
Ha! I knew it.
Now, while the two men in this movie have quite a bit to talk about, I want to start first by talking about Patty Shepard. She plays Mary, Peter's sister on this island. Huh. You got Peter, you got Mary, and the vampire's name is Hannah.
It's like a biblical name all-star team.
Yeah, I guess so. Mary is the school marm here on Vampire Island. It's like a Charles Dickens style classroom scene that we see here at the very end of the first segment. The children are all dirty faced and, their hair is kind of mussed. And, there is something kind of old timey about it, isn't there? It's a tiny schoolhouse that only has the one class in it. Then they're dismissed and the kids go off to play. Now keep the thought of the little boy and the little girl going off together for later. Exactly why Mary is here is revealed a little later as it pertains to something about Peter's personality and the reasoning behind his devotion to Hannah. So watch for that in the movie. However, she's played, again, by Patty Shepard. Now, while she was born in Greenville, South Carolina, she moved with her Air Force family to Spain, and she basically remained there for the rest of her life. She moved to Madrid to study philosophy, but was discovered and became a model instead. She started out making commercials for Spanish television, but that led to more serious acting jobs. One of her most iconic roles of her career came in the very early 70s. In 1970, she was in the movie Los Monstruos del Terror, better known here in the United States as one of the many poorly named Dracula vs. Frankenstein films. That starred Paul Naschy, Spain's foremost horror film star and someone we saw a couple of seasons back in Vengeance of the Zombies. Naschy and Shepard would team up again for 1971's La Noche del Valpurgis, or The Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman. I wrote about that movie way back in 2016, but that movie would often be cited as the movie that would propel Naschy and the genre of horror into superstar status in Spain. And it was the fifth film in Naschy's Hombre Lobo series, but it was the one that really launched the whole shebang for the actor. Shepard got married to Spanish actor Manuel de Blas in 1967. She was with him until the time of her death in 2013 when she had a heart attack. She had been retired from acting for nearly 25 years prior to her untimely passing. And speaking of, Manuel de Blas is still acting and has racked up over 220 credits in his career. In 2022, he appeared in the feature film adaptation of Uncharted, starring Tom Holland, Mark Wahlberg, and Antonio Banderas. Alright, so let's get back to Hannah, Queen of the Vampires, because that queen is soon to rise and create all sorts of problems on Vampire Island.
You know what I like about this Hannah chick?
What's that?
Where do I start? Well, first I have to say that where do I get a job like hers?
What do you mean?
I mean, like, how do you get that gig where I just lie in a satin coffin all day and night and just occasionally open my eyes and maybe, I don't know, open my mouth for a little bit and then just, go back to sleep or something?
Wait a minute, are you saying you would like to be paid to be a layabout?
Yes, how do I get that job? Can I do that here? I mean, I'll do my best to look pretty while I do it, but can I just, I don't know, like put a coffin over there or something and just lay in it and be all cool and be a vampire queen or something?
No.
You didn't even give that a second thought, did you?
Not at all.
Oh, well, anyway, I also like that it looks like she does that thing where she only opens her eyes when no one's looking at her. Then when they look over, she closes them and pretends to be asleep. Here, let's do that. See? That was a fun game.
You really get bored over there, don't you?
Sometimes. Ooh, also, sometimes, if I was a queen vampire, I could turn into green fart smoke. That would be an easy way to slip away from unwanted attention. Or I could do that in an elevator when someone comes into the elevator that I don't like.
Now, I do like that idea.
I thought you might. Plus, I wouldn't have to speak, like, at all. That would make it real easy for you when scripting our episodes.
Oh, that would be true. Now, the actress playing Hannah is Teresa Gimpera. Now, she's still working today, but doesn't appear to have a credit since 2016. She was in her mid-30s when she did this movie. I like her look. She does look like someone who would be royalty. She's appealing in her lack of movement, and her face kind of looking both dead and alive at the same time is kind of interesting. I don't know if I can accurately describe this, but I think she looks like a drawing of a really pretty comic book vampire character. Like, she looks like she could appear in a 70s comic book as a vampire character, and it makes her that much prettier in this movie. I don't know, but maybe that's hard to explain, but whatever. And as we kind of alluded to, she does not speak in this film at all, despite the title character. Not many situations like that in media.
Dream job.
Indeed. Now, the two leading men in this movie were kind of heavy hitters at this time. The first one that we saw in the movie was Peter, played by Mark Damon. Damon at the time was making the rounds in European movies. Interestingly, I think he looks like someone you would expect to be British or Italian, but he was born in Chicago. He starred in about 40 movies and were in two classic spaghetti westerns, Johnny Oro and Johnny Yuma, both in 1966. And he was, at one time, considered for the role of Django. Shortly after this movie, he would quit acting and became a rather successful producer. Early on in that producing career, he produced The Arena, starring Pam Grier, and the woman who would eventually become Damon's wife, Margaret Markov. The two of them are still married today. He produced some big-time and well-received movies like 2003's Monster, which won Charlize Theron an Oscar for Best Actress, and 2004's Beyond the Sea about Bobby Darin. But I'm about to list off a few movies that are notoriously not well-liked. Are you ready, nurse?
Hit me with them, Doc.
Alright, here we go. 9.5 Weeks, The Clan of the Cave Bear, Mac and Me, Wild Orchid, and Fear.com. But then again, even though these were released with his name on it as a producer, he also produced The Neverending Story, Das Boot, The Lost Boys, Flight of the Navigator, so you win some and you lose some. Now, I did write a little more recently about a movie he starred in that is rather awful. He was in Byleth, the demon of incest. He played a man who was obsessed with his own sister, and that invited a demon to be able to basically maybe possess him or something. I don't know. It was very bad, I know that. And it was really oddly edited and poorly constructed as a movie.
Not to mention it sounds kind of gross. Incest? Yuck.
Yeah. Now, of course, our lead star in this is none other than Andrew Prine. Prine is a superstar of the lower budget era. He, of course, starred as our maniac killer in The Centerfold Girls from season 2, like I mentioned previously. But also, he had the lead role in Simon, King of the Witches.
You thinking what I'm thinking?
Simon, King of the Witches, and Hannah, Queen of the Vampires, they're really easy to ship, right?
Right?
Anyway, he would have a role as the maniac in Terror Circus, also known as Nightmare Circus. He'd later show up in Grizzly and the Evil, and even later would, of course, appear in a Rob Zombie movie, the one that being the underrated Lords of Salem. He appeared in a ton of different movies and television series. His TV appearances weren't anything to sneeze at either, as he appeared on Kolchak, Wonder Woman, and as a major role as one of the visitors on both the miniseries. So lots of stuff that...
Whoa.
What?
He didn't appear on any Star Trek?
Oh, of course he did. He was in both Next Generation and Deep Space Nine.
Of course.
Anyway, we've talked about Andrew Prine a little while back with that Centerfold Girls episode. I could spend a real long time talking about him just from his massive career.
We probably should mention the drip he's bringing to this movie. I mean, look at this man's clothes and his style.
Hell yeah. I mean, we should probably get back to the movie. Prine's Chris has opened Hannah's tomb, but he's about to recognize that he can't stake her to make everyone feel better about it because... well, her heart's still covered by the heavy lid. So he's also saved Mary from the hippie caveman and revealed that the wild man's got a messed up face, and that made the poor dude pretty upset. But everything is set up now for Hannah to wreak havoc on Vampire Island and cause all sorts of problems for the locals, starting with a blind man and his young helper. So let's get back to it.
Let's go, Hannah!
And so, Hannah's legacy will continue on. Now, she may be gone, but there's now a little baby vampire and her little worshipping friend who will keep Vampire Island's name intact.
Things got crazy in the last few minutes.
Oh, most definitely.
Throughout the movie, Hannah isn't just a vampire, but she's got that green fart cloud thing going on, and she can also be a werewolf. In fact, she had to do her first couple of kills as a wolf so she could build up her strength to be a full-on killer vamp.
You know, one thing to note on that, you know Wolfsbane.
Of course, I've got a plant of that in our backyard.
Yeah, well, in this movie... wait, you do?
Yeah, we gotta keep those vampires away. You never know what might climb out of the poop chute.
Huh, but you love vampires, though.
Yeah, but I don't want to be one of them that much.
Anyway, apparently, at one point, they do call it Dogbane in this movie.
Maybe a bad translation?
Yeah, maybe in this instance, but there is a toxic plant called Dogbane. But anyway, there's a whole lot to like about Hannah, Queen of the Vampires. I love the way this movie is shot and how it looks. You've got this island that kind of has this very standoffish group of locals. They're all grizzled and what have you. I love the school kids and how they look and how they go to school with just a single room and how that feels like a Charles Dickens type group of kids. I love the idea of Peter being a fuck up of sorts and that leads him to try to find something to do with his life. So he ends up worshiping this idea of Hannah and seeking immortality and so forth.
But yeah, then he gets killed even before he can turn.
Yeah, the villagers weren't messing around with him. The use of shadows in this movie, the location, which is Turkey, by the way, and the sets with columns and the catacombs and the vaults and the very humble homes and all the blocking that was used in this movie, it's just a well-constructed film.
Yeah, I liked this movie a lot.
So do your thing with the review and stuff.
This is a great start to our new season. Like you just said, I love how this movie looks, and I like what's going on in the movie. I really want to be Hannah, where I can, 1, just lay around in a velvet or satin tomb all day, 2, turn into a fart cloud, 3 become a wolf, and 4 have a weirdo worship me and smash a guy under my tomb to draw out someone who will ultimately open my tomb and let me out. If you ask me, that all sounds great. So yeah, this is a great little vampire movie that maybe looks like something out of the 70s, but still works 50 years later. There's no better way to start a new season than giving this movie a perfect 5 poops out of 5.
Yeah, I knew you'd like this movie. This movie is really good, and I do hope people can get some appreciation out of this like we did.
Me too. People should be seeking out this little classic.
So, here we are. It's good to be back.
It's good to be back in the swing of things after a whole year off.
Yeah, I am pretty positive the poop chute is nice and clogged up.
We've been good at keeping it cleaned out, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, here's how we're going to deal with this. Nurse Disembody and I are going overtime and cranking out a hell of a lot of episodes in 2024.
I'm glad we're giving the people what they want. I just wish you would reconsider the overtime pay thing.
No. But we're going on starting now, basically, and staying with the pedal to the metal all the way to Halloween. That's going to be a grand total of 28 episodes.
That's right. If you do the math, that's more than half of a whole year.
You got that right. Am I sure about doing this huge slate? Yes. Is it going to be easy? No.
I'm sure by episode 3 we're going to be on some sort of drug to keep us going.
I mean, I hope not, but whatever we got to do, we'll do it.
Hell yeah.
So we're going to revisit some genres we haven't done enough of, or for that matter, maybe a couple that we haven't done in a while, and we're also going to do a specific genre we haven't done at all yet. So it should be fun times ahead.
Better be.
What's that?
I said it better be a fun time.
Oh, well, well, about that, see you next week, everyone.